Controlling the sky has been critical to winning the wars. This is the first new category that's been created by the FAA in 60 years. So if we looked at even the top 1,000 cities in the world, 20 aircraft per market, it's 20,000 aircrafts times $5 million. It's already a huge market.
Archer's cool. You're going to be integrated and be the provider of air taxi for the LA 2028 Olympics.
People are like, oh, Archer bought an ad in the Super Bowl. That's not true. We did not. In fact, Usher wanted that in the Super Bowl. Originally, he was interested in starting the halftime show coming out of that aircraft. It didn't physically fit through the tunnel in Allegiant Stadium.
We announced Regent Defense.
The United States is committed to achieving peace through strength.
Moving intra-theater logistics. It's going to be all hands on deck to get that done. And frankly, that's an area that keeps me awake at night, is the resupply.
Expansion of Regent Seaglider business line. A surface vessel today is going to go 20 knots. A Seaglider can fly at 160 knots or 180 miles an hour, so we're 8 times faster.
We went zero to first boat on the water in about 3 months at ARC. We went zero to first customer delivery in about 24 months. And our next products are on an even faster timeline.
You've raised around $100 million from some big Silicon Valley investors like Eclipse, Andreessen Horowitz, Lower Carbon Capital, Abstract Ventures, and Menlo Ventures. Why did you go after venture capital?
Today's boats look a lot like the old leaf blowers that are loud and noxious and run out of gas on you. Going electric solves all those problems.
Adam Goldstein, Billy Thalheimer, Mitch Lee, welcome to Sorcery. Adam Goldstein, welcome to Sorcery.
Thank you.
So you're CEO of Archer. For those who may not know, what is Archer?
So I founded Archer to really build the next generation of aviation. And so we focus specifically on vertical lift aircraft. We have a civil business and a defense business. On the civil side, we're building a piloted plus 4-passenger vehicle. We call that Midnight, designed to fly up to 100 miles, 150 miles per hour. Think in and around city environments, Manhattan to JFK. On the defense side, we're building a hybrid VTOL product, and we do that with our partner Anduril. And that's all about building the new autonomous attritable aircraft that you will likely see in the future generations to come.
Amazing. I've definitely seen the press around Anduril. That's a huge accomplishment, and I'm excited to get into that further. But to start, we're at Reindustrialize. So it's all about reindustrializing America, bringing manufacturing back here, and some more of the industrial kind of base. So I want to ask you, what is Archer's role in industrialization?
This is the first new category that's been created by the FAA in 60 years. And so there's an opportunity here to build not just a handful of aircraft, but a next generation or a generational platform, which can scale to a level that you haven't previously seen in the VTOL market. So helicopters were always limited because of the cost, safety, and noise problem. So they're too expensive, they make too much noise, and the safety standards I think need to be higher to really rapidly scale this stuff. And the eVTOL products solve all those problems. And so it gives us an ability to build a whole new industry that can rapidly scale. And so if you look at kind of rebuilding the industrial base here, manufacturing jobs, it takes new categories to do that. And so we have this opportunity to build this whole new category here that can scale up really, really rapidly. And what's really compelling about it is that not only is there a civil application to do it, but there's also an interesting defense application. And so if we can build defense variants of the civil side, it gives us an ability to kind of switch back and forth from the civil side to the defense side, depending on the needs at a given time. And so it's an ability to really, build up not just one industry, but kind of multiple industries at the same time.
How big can this TAM get?
I think directionally, everybody agrees it's big, but I think putting a number on it, I think is quite hard. But I'll give you a perspective. So if you have a vehicle that is comparable in terms of use cases as what a helicopter can do. So you think it can take off and land vertically, so it's near where You start and where you end, your destination. If you could make it, very, very safe and you can make it affordable to the masses, all of a sudden you can start just looking at where helicopters operate today and then trying to understand, could you even replace those? Could you complement those? Could you, substitute those? And so if we looked at even the top 1,000 cities in the world, I don't know what the 1,000th biggest city is, but I imagine it's a city we've all heard of. It's Denver, Colorado, or Flagstaff, Arizona, or some city we would all know. And I always like to sort of ponder the question, could we put 20 aircraft in those cities? Well, sure, there's hospitals there. They all use helicopters. And if this is just a lower cost, safer version of what they already use, I would assume that's a pretty good use case, or VIP transport. So even if you forget air taxi, right? If you look at the top 1,000 markets and we were to build, 20 aircraft per market, it's 20,000 aircrafts times $5 million. It's already a huge market. We haven't even started. We haven't even touched air taxi yet. Then you add defense, and then you start to think about air taxi, right? And all of a sudden you can get into a, really, really big numbers. So the question will turn into, how many can we build? And I think that's the challenge. And so I don't want to underestimate how hard it is to actually build aircraft. We haven't really scaled aviation since World War II. And so it's going to be challenging to do that. But I think that's really the nut to crack that could determine the size of this. Because I think from a demand perspective, it's kind of unlimited, meaning like nobody likes sitting in traffic. Everybody wishes they could, instead of spending 90 minutes in a car, they could fly somewhere in 5 minutes. It's obviously a way better use of your time. So the question is, can we operationalize it? Can we build these aircrafts at mass scale? And I think the demand will ultimately be there.
Let's talk about building them, because you've made some really amazing manufacturing efforts. So what is the current strategy for manufacturing Archer?
So from a long-term perspective, the goal is to build at our high-volume factory in Covington, Georgia. So right outside of Atlanta, Georgia, there's this amazing town called Covington where we built a big factory on 100 acres that's designed to scale upwards of thousands of aircrafts per year. So that's a huge undertaking, big facility. I think by volume, it would make it one of the biggest, aviation manufacturing sites, by volume in the world. But in the short term, we build stuff out of the California facilities, which is kind of more of our new product introduction, or NPI lines. So we learn how to build at the NPI lines. We take those processes and ultimately bring them out to Georgia to scale them. So we're in the process of doing that right now. We're learning how to build. We're running through all of our quality systems. We're running through all of our manufacturing processes. Ultimately, we have to bring the cost way down. We have to make the manufacturability, much greater to really scale us into sort of that, thousands of units per year. And that's really, really hard. And so that's the dynamic that we have set up. It's a U.S.-based manufacturing strategy with U.S. And kind of supply partners, which I think allows us to move quickly and also kind of keep the costs at a very reasonable place.
You founded and you've been operating the company for quite some time. We have shifted into a new administration. Has this new administration been supportive of Archer and the industry?
The new administration has been extremely supportive. They've been great. And I think they look at us as sort of a couple different things. One is we represent safety in aviation. I think that's really important, especially today where aviation is kind of going through some tougher times. And so we kind of represent the future and a safe product that can be brought to the market. So I think that's really compelling. Two is we represent jobs in manufacturing in America, which I think is also really important. And three is we represent defense in terms of building autonomous attritable aircraft to help really protect the country in the kind of the next generation conflicts. You can see it today by looking at the conflicts that controlling the sky has been critical to winning the wars. And so making sure the U.S. leads in aviation has been a very high priority. And I think as the sort of next generation of aviation companies are born, it's critical that they're built here in the U.S. And so the administration has been extremely supportive. You've seen that President Trump, signed the executive order, which had a big emphasis on the eVTOL industry. Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy, announced the 5i agreement at the Paris Air Show a couple weeks ago. And so there's been a consistent drumbeat of positive support from this administration.
Let's talk about the executive order. So what does that unlock?
The first thing it does is really help the FAA understand that this is a really big priority. And so that this is a priority to the administration, that this should be a priority there. You think about the FAA's position, it's actually really challenging. So the US has led in terms of new aircraft programs being certified. So if you want to certify a plane, there's not very many places to go. There's generally 4 places to go. You can go to the US, to the FAA, You go to Europe through YASA, you can go through ANAC in Brazil, and then you can go to Transport Canada. And so the US has really dominated a lot of that. And so they have to look at all these new types of aircrafts that are out there and like figure out which ones to go work on top of the existing legacy providers with their new platforms. So when Boeing has a new plane or Airbus has a new plane, they bring it to the FAA and the FAA has to work on those aircrafts too. So they have to figure out like where to prioritize. So this really helped, I think, the FAA understand that this was a huge priority to the administration. I think the next step was to really put in place a process to actually start to see these aircraft roll out into market. And so one way to do it is to do sort of the all or nothing approach. And that's to say, okay, there's going to be no aircraft anywhere in the world, or one day you're going to get this, magical type certificate stamp, and now there's going to be aircraft everywhere all over the world. And that does seem to me a bit, I understand it, but that's a bit extreme. I think the second way to look at this is more of the Waymo style approach, which is to identify different zones and to start testing in different zones. Very simple routes from A to B, from and then eventually B to C, and then A to B to C, and then multiple different zones that are doing this to really start to lay the frameworks to put that out there to start to scale an industry in a way that I think is more digestible and not so extreme, all or nothing. And so they really started to put the frameworks in place to help us go out there and do that.
Let's talk about Midnight. So Midnight had its first piloted flight. Could you explain the progress you've made? Sure.
I wasn't sure if you were going down a Taylor Swift album or... So the Midnight aircraft, we've been working on it for a long time. For me, it's really amazing to watch it fly because we put so much energy and effort into the design of the aircraft. And so building aircraft that look cool is actually really hard because everything you do to make it look cool is actually bad for aerodynamics. And so it's kind of like a penalty to do that. So it takes a lot of extra effort to build an aircraft that actually looks cool. Most aircraft actually don't look very good because they're just effectively a math equation. We wanted to build something that was emotional, something that was desirable. You wanted to touch it when you see it to sort of bring back, that feeling of aviation, wanting to fly, wanting to be a part of that, the way people connect with cars. So watching it fly was really, really amazing. In order to put pilots in these aircraft, we wanted to get the safety standard very, very high. And so I think we've done a really good job by staying very conservative in our flight test program of flying everything autonomously, and then ultimately moving into the piloted versions of the flight. Lots of flight tests have had, through other programs, have had lots of complications. So I think like taking that conservative approach is the right one. And I think it's the right path and the sort of the quickest path for us to get to market. And don't forget, we've done this in half the time as our competitors have done this. And so we have moved at incredible speeds. And when you look at it, when you kind of zoom in, it looks like we're at the same space, maybe we're ahead. But if you like zoom out, you look at the sort of the slope of our progress of that graph, we are moving so much faster than anybody else in the world.
I want to dig into the safety components a little bit more because you've built it and designed it for safety. So could you explain that?
Sure. One of the biggest benefits you get of these aircraft is that there's a lot of redundancy. So if you look at a helicopter, there's one big rotor, unless it's a really big helicopter like a Chinook, but there's generally one big rotor, which will typically have one engine. And so it leads to lots of single points of failure. And so if any of those individual parts fail that make that, that rotor spin, you can have a catastrophic event. When you switch to an electric engine, you can scale the engines down. So you can make them as big or as small as you want. You still will need the same, what they call disk area, so the amount of kind of propeller or rotor space that spins to lift the object off the ground. But you can now do it in sort of broken up individual pieces, which means if you have any individual failures in any of those parts, which are likely to happen if you fly long enough, it won't take the aircraft down. So in Midnight's case, we have 12 sets of engines and propellers that are powered by 6 battery packs. And so each battery pack will power 2 diagonally opposed motors. So think the front left and the back right. So if you lost a battery pack, it would take out those 2 engines and the plane would still perfectly bounce. If you lost a propeller, if you lost an engine, if you lost an actuator, any of the individual parts, the aircraft would still fly fine. And so that level of redundancy can be added in a way that you couldn't in a typical helicopter, which allows you to build it and ultimately certify it at a very, very high level of safety.
You've made huge commercial efforts for Archer. Archer's cool. Like Archer was included in an ad with Usher during the Super Bowl. You're also going to be integrated and be the provider of air taxi for the LA 2028 Olympics. So what is your positioning for the commercial side of things and who's the team behind it?
So thank you for saying Archer is cool. We definitely work on that. It started with the design, but I think it's kind of more of like the whole culture of the company. When that thing came about with Usher, it was actually, it was a really cool story. People are like, oh, Archer bought an ad in the Super Bowl. That's not true. We did not. In fact, we did not pay money towards that. Usher wanted that in the Super Bowl. Originally, it was supposed to be, he was interested in starting the halftime show coming out of that aircraft. And that's how he wanted to start it. It didn't physically fit through the tunnel in Allegiant Stadium. And so that was a change. And then ultimately we made that, sort of that video with him. And so it was an interesting journey to get there, but we have had a lot of requests of people that want to showcase the aircraft in lots of different ways publicly. And so because it's cool, I think we get a lot of attention. It also draws it's an easy spot for the haters to come out and say like, oh, Archer's paying for all this stuff. We actually rarely do pay for any of that. It comes to us and people want to include the aircraft in a lot of these different things, which is, I think pretty cool. But what's, I think, important is bringing it out and making it a part of like mainstream. And so by putting it out there that way, it gets people comfortable with it earlier. And it's not like some scary new thing that like they haven't heard of before. It's actually getting out there. And when you see a lot of these people talk about it, I think it really does help with getting the consumer adoption story going early, which I do think is going to be important to that. We want to make sure that people see the aircrafts as desirable, but also the second act you're going to see too is there's a lot of stuff we can do that really is like good for the world that we can do there too. You can imagine there was a fleet of 50, just making this up, but 50 drone versions of the aircraft in LA during the fires that could have helped fight in those fires, which are again much lower cost solutions than using helicopters to do that. And so there's ways that we can put this stuff out there to help really consumers see it for as a positive force of change, really all relating back to consumer adoption.
Really interesting. I think recently I saw you had a big event in New York City with a famous comedian.
Yes. The Jimmy Fallon story was actually pretty funny. So we have been, my whole theory has been win LA, win the country. And so LA has been a very key market for us. We've thought about it a lot. And so a year ago, we designed the map that we laid out of our vertiport network. So the places where we'll take off and land. And of course, very strategically, we looked at that as locations that would overlap the main locations for the Olympics in LA in 28. And so LA 28, I think, is going to serve as probably the most important catalyst for the industry because it's the first time globally people are going to get to see these aircraft on TV, 41 million viewers per day, 19 days on NBC during the Olympics, but as well as all the dignitaries, all the different athletes, all the VIPs that come to the actual Olympics itself. You're going to see that physically, take the products at mass. It's like the best advertisement for the industry there is. So back in 2022, the FAA actually came out there and coined the term Innovate 28, which was we want the LA 28 Olympic Games to be the first time people see at scale one city show a lot of these aircraft. So think not just 5 or 10, but a lot of aircraft in one city moving people around. That was the FAA's idea, and we agreed. And so that's what we've been working towards. So the Olympics is an NBC thing, right? They showcase the Olympics and it's TV, right? And so they want storylines, they want things like that. So when we won the Olympics, they said, well, why don't you come and, talk about this on one of the shows? Jimmy Fallon's one of them. And so they said, okay, and you could also, you could give, Jimmy Fallon like a jacket, an Olympics jacket. And I was like, could it be a pilot jacket? And they're like, that's a great idea. It's good for kind of TV. And so they've integrated us into their story. We're a part of the storyline for the Olympics. And I think that's a really cool thing. Again, going back to showcasing American innovation, American superiority in aviation, and showcasing that, basically leading up to the Olympics and on the actual Olympics itself.
Sorcery is brought to you by Brex, the financial stack trusted by more than 30,000 companies, including 1 in 3 venture-backed startups in the US. Nearly 40% of startups fail because they run out of cash. Brex is literally built to help founders avoid that. Unlike traditional banks that let your money sit idle, chipping away at it with fees, Brex is designed to help you spend smarter and move faster. Their all-in-one solution combines checking, treasury, and FDIC protection into one powerful account.
You can send and receive money globally at lightning speeds, get 20 times the standard FDIC coverage through their partner banks, and even high yield from day one. With same day and even same hour liquidity, access your funds anytime. Companies like Scale AI, DoorDash, ServiceTitan, Hims, Anthropic, Flexport, Robinhood, and Plaid trust and use Brex. Start today at brex.com/sorcery. That's BREX.com/sorcery.
I would be remiss not to mention your global expansion very fast and the partners that you've gathered along the way. So you've recently made some commercial efforts in the UAE. Could you share some of that?
Sure. It started in the US with United Airlines. So they were very big early supporters. United looked at this industry and thought, okay, one is it's sort of the tip of the spear on sustainability, meaning like, how do you bring some type of sustainable form of aviation like to market? Because it's really hard. SAF fuels are expensive, hydrogen's very far away. And so it was actually a really interesting way to start. As they started to dig into the industry, they started to look at it and understand that they have a lot of inventory that is very high margin that ultimately gets unsold, especially on their long haul trips. And that's how airlines make money. So think first class, business class seats that get unsold. What do? They upgrade passengers. So if you look at the business model, and if you're able to go attract people that to give away $100 here, $100 there in flights, to attract people to buy $3,000 tickets for more expensive seats, it's actually a really compelling business case too, where all of a sudden they can monetize inventory that they historically just gave away, upgrading people. And so everybody looked at that and said, wow, that's pretty compelling. But even I would say more compelling is, well, what if my competitors did that to me? And I got to defend my my highest margin, best customers. And so all of a sudden the airlines looked at this industry and said, wow, this is actually quite compelling. It's a way for us to potentially add revenue, defend against losing revenue, and provide a higher elevated service than what they could actually provide. So globally, the airlines started, reaching out and wanted to be a part of that. We're kind of the only game in town. Our competitor really wants to operate. And so if you want to buy aircraft, we're kind of the only game in town to really do that from. And so, we do a very good job of hooking up with, I think, the best partners in the top countries to really set the base layer that we'll need in those countries to build up, big long-term generational businesses.
What are the geographies you're going after?
Well, we started in the GCC with the UAE, and then ultimately, of course, the West will be very important. The UAE became very interesting. One, they're an early investor in Archer. So Mubadala, the sovereign wealth fund of Abu Dhabi, is an early Archer investor. They've been very leaned in on this industry specifically. They want to be a leader in aviation, and they want to attract Western tech companies to come to the region and actually start to build. Ultimately, why? To create jobs. And I think that's what ultimately will happen. I think it was a good bet with Archer because ultimately I do think there will be a lot of jobs created in the UAE because of this industry. And so they've been very willing to work with their regulator, so to help bring the technology to market. They've been very forward-leaning on that. And I think that is also going to serve, like Archer will be an advertisement effectively for new tech companies to want to come there to show that very business-friendly, you can work with the regulators, there's capital there to support, and that it's a great place to do business.
Exciting. Well, we have to talk about Archer Defense. How is your partnership with Anduril going?
That partnership, I think, is going to be like one of the most important partnerships, for the company. It's been going great. So when you look at a lot of the defense programs, especially in the venture community, I think it's actually hard. And there's a lot of excitement around defense, but I think it's actually really hard because the buyer, the governments, are not like typical buyers that you would see on the commercial side, on the civil side of things. And so the time horizons are unclear. The size of the programs are unclear. And so you have to figure out as a startup how to survive in this, in this environment of uncertainty, and somehow attract consistent funding while, it's even unclear what the procurement of the exact product they even want is. It's not a very straightforward process. And so it's going to take big companies to do that. I think it's hard for small startups to be successful. They have to sort of earn their way into becoming a big company to be able to execute against the big programs. So Anduril's earned that right. And so what they looked at was some of the biggest programs that existed out there. And so there is a interested customer, interested programs they're looking at, and they involve some very deep technical expertise in rotorcraft. So, VTOL type products. And so could Anduril have done this themselves? Sure, if they had enough time, but there's real need now. And so by partnering with Archer, it was a way for them to still be able to execute against a big program where we could build the aircraft, but at the same time, be able to be in the game of some of the biggest programs. I think that will ultimately, come to be.
Well, we also need to talk about AI. The world is transforming really, really fast with AI, and there's lots of data that's involved in eVTOLs and aircrafts. A company I recently came across was Turing, and they help build and deploy next-gen AGI systems for real-world use cases across industries. So I'm curious from your standpoint, what is Archer doing in AI? And I think you're doing something with Palantir too. So how does this all come together?
If you watch any sci-fi movie and you see the flying cars, the highways in the sky, that's the 20, 30-year dream of like what I'm trying to build. But you couldn't do that today, even if we could deploy all the vehicles, because the way the air traffic control system is built is it's extremely manual. And that's created this sort of endless cycle of manual, instructions to pilots, manual instructions to air traffic control, and sort of the whole chain has become very manual. So right now, a lot of the focus is on to stabilize the ATC, the air traffic control product, and then to modernize it. But the way I look at it is there's a third level, which is to revolutionize it. And in order to do that, if we're going to put, hundreds or thousands of vehicles in the air per city, we're going to need to, it's going to be necessary to do that. And it actually will likely be much safer, meaning when the machines are doing things rather than humans. I always scratch my head at why people protest against these new technologies that are safer. Waymo, there's people protesting Waymos. It's a way safer way to drive than drunk drivers, than some older people driving, or than most drivers, even on a statistical basis, just looking at deaths per million miles. And so I think it's really important that these new technologies do get developed. I think AI is going to play a huge role in modernizing and ultimately revolutionizing air traffic control. And I want Archer to play a big part in that. And I think Palantir is a great partner to do that with. We kind of have complementary skills. I mean, we are, as an OEM, can build stuff into the systems that we're building, but also look at it as a system as a whole in order to think about what the end product, the end state should be.
As we wrap up, I definitely need to mention Brex. So Brex is a sponsor of Sorcery. Archer was a sponsor of Sorcery at one point. Thank you very much. That was really fun. We had a really good Archer ad in there. For Brex, they're all about spending smarter, moving faster. You're going to be unlocking performance for cities, for people that live in the suburbs, for people that live in the cities. So could you share more on that and how you're going to be increasing performance for Americans?
Today, people live and work in cities, I think for many reasons, but one is it's convenient, meaning if you live outside the city and you want to drive into the city, that's time away from your kids, your families, or whatever. Also, I think humans like that. I think humans do like living in kind of small areas, and I think they enjoy the social interactions of that. But if you did have an inability to move around much easier, I do think it'll change the way cities will be built. I think new cities will get built. That'll be much easier to travel back and forth. And so ultimately, I think transportation generates commerce. I think that's a big part of it. I mean, look at what aviation did in general. I think we're the next layer of that. And so I do think it will generate not just jobs from building, but ultimately a lot of commerce as people are moving back and forth, creating new experiences. So as an example, if you are 20 miles outside of LA, there's desert. And, there's, you can imagine, a beautiful hotel, making this up, somebody builds some, incredible oasis in the middle of the desert. That's only really 20 miles outside of LA. If you drove, it would take you forever to get there. But if you flew, it could take you, yeah, exactly. It doesn't take you very much time. And so you can create whole new cities, whole new experiences that I think will create a lot of business that will be, I think, good for everybody.
So exciting. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Adam. Yes. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Billy Thalheimer, how are you?
Hello, I'm good.
Welcome to Sorcery.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Long time coming.
Yes, definitely. Been
long time as in Hill and Valley a couple months ago.
Impromptu meeting in Hill and Valley has led to us here.
Well, we're at Reindustrialize.
This is a pretty sweet conference.
It's awesome. It's sweet. You had some huge news earlier today.
We did. We announced Regent Defense, which is an expansion of Regent's Seaglider business line for huge growing need of our defense customers. So it's, I think, absolutely the right place to announce it. Couldn't be better timed. I'm pretty stoked.
Let's unpack it all. First, let's start out with what is Regent?
Yeah. So Regent builds seagliders. Seagliders are a new mode of transportation, hybrid between boats and planes. Technically, they're a hydrofoiling wing and ground effect vehicle. There's a lot there. So generally hybrid of boats and planes. They do regional routes. So in the commercial side, up to about 180 miles of range on battery technology alone. So doing stuff like Manhattan to the Hamptons, Miami to West Palm. Internationally, we have markets in the Middle East, Japan, have some great routes in Hawaii, et cetera. And then today we announced how we're expanding that into DoD. We've been working with the Marine Corps for a couple of years on contested logistics mission. And now we're adding range with the hybrid and autonomy and other form factors too.
Wow. So why now? Why Regent Defense now?
Yeah. Well, I think it's sort of been a natural growth for us. Like we've been working with the Marine Corps for 2 years. We've been working with SOCOM even longer. So the company was founded, like myself, my co-founder, we came from the aviation background. We were working on eVTOLs. I love the electrification technology. It's low cost, it's low noise, it's sustainable, it's safe. But it didn't really work in the aviation domain because of limited range and because of long certification pathways. So that was sort of the initial vision, was we're going to take that technology, bring it into the maritime domain, and get something to market faster that can go twice as far. But pretty early on, it occurred to us that building something that is very high speed, low cost, hard to see, operates on water, easy to crew, was just as relevant in defense as it was in commercial. So that sort of started us down the defense pathway. We've been on contract with the Marine Corps for a couple of years now, going through the prototyping process, testing, developing, wargaming, et cetera. They were with us with our quarter scale Seaglider prototype, which proved that we could do these float, foil, fly operations. And now they're with us. Actually, they were out at our headquarters a couple of weeks ago working on the full scale prototype now that we're getting close to flight. So it was sort of an evolution there. But what we've seen certainly over the past 6 months or so is just a growing use case. Obviously, sort of geopolitical environment. Things are getting hotter in Indo-Pacific. Logistics through the island chains is sort of this reversion to World War II style tactics. And if you look at leadership of DoD, and particularly in the Marine Corps that's tasked with this mission, it's like moving things around these island chains, contested logistics is underwriting success of the naval campaign. So our vehicle fits into that perfectly. And what we realize is like now is really the time to lean in. Our contracts are growing. This use case is growing. And so let's build the portfolio.
Okay. That's a lot. That's big. So how does this enable the warfighter? Like, can you give a more tangible like use case or like day operation?
For sure. So, high level, we can sort of boil it down to just the performance. So a surface vessel today is going to go 20 knots, mid 20s miles an hour. That's when you start skipping off the waves and stuff like that. So a seaglider can fly at 160 knots. Or 180 miles an hour. So we're 8 times faster. So if you translate that into moving around island chains in the Pacific, Guam is about as close as the US gets to China. And then the first island chain is, Taiwan and Japan and sort of those islands there. So that's like a 4 or 5 day sail if you're a surface vessel today, and a seaglider could fly there in 10 hours. So it just gives you a sense of how quickly we can reposition things around island chains in the Pacific, which is the critical theater. But then also you have the capabilities of the vehicle compared to aircraft, because you could say like, oh, well, I could fly a plane there, but planes need fixed land infrastructure, and seagliders can take off and land in 5-foot seas. That's like the key differentiation of a seaglider versus seaplanes or flying boats of the past. So we're a surface vessel, in that we can, do open water operations, but we're 8 times faster, or we're an airplane, but we can land and take off in these high sea states.
Does that mean they're more stealth?
Absolutely. So seagliders are, as I said, a kind of vehicle called a wing and ground effect vehicle. Not many people know about them. Fewer have ever been on one. They've never really been commercialized before. So a wing and ground effect vehicle flies at this low altitude called the ground effect. So that's within a wingspan of the surface of the water. You start to sort of pressurize the air under the wings. So when a bird is flying low over the surface of the water, they're not just having fun, like it's actually very efficient for them to do that. So we use that same air cushion over the water. We always stay at that altitude. And so from that sort of stealth or more of a low signature perspective, because we're not actually deflecting radar, but by flying low, we don't touch the water surface, so we're above any sonar detection, and we're just over the surface of the water, so we're below long-range radar in some cases. So we can actually move around and be very hard to detect, and also because of that electric propulsion, we're very difficult to hear. Like we'd be out on the water having this conversation, the sea glider would be going by us right now.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty surprising actually the first time we got out there.
Really?
Like we knew it. We knew it would happen, and we did all the math and stuff on it. My dad's an acoustic engineer, so that's sort of like wired into my brain growing up. But just to get out there and see it and not hear it. And on the hydrofoils, there's no wake at all. So it just passes you and it's imperceptible, and it's 15,000 pounds. So it's pretty surreal.
What's the process for testing these?
Yeah. So when you get into test, and we're doing human tests, we decided from the get-go, we're going to put humans on board. This is going to be human safety critical systems. You may have seen the whole Boeing thing about how they only had 2 redundancies. So when one failed, you trust this one, but this one's faulty, so the system breaks. So we have triple redundant systems. So
love that.
Yes, critical.
Critical.
Also means you have to do more testing, right? So we have this triple redundant autonomous flight control system. And then the way you test these complicated systems, particularly if you're doing stuff like high-speed testing, is we have a whole simulation environment. So we have every wiring run, every piece of computer equipment in a simulator exactly the same way as it's installed in the vehicle, like the actual same components. We test everything with our physics models, then we go out and validate it. So we're really never doing anything new on the water, or at least we shouldn't be. We're just validating something we already simulated, and then we go back and we tweak the models and we iterate, and then we rinse and repeat.
In today's high-speed business world, staying ahead means using the smartest tools possible, including the powerful capabilities of artificial intelligence. Meet Turing Intelligence. Turing builds customizable AI systems designed to solve your mission-critical challenges no matter your industry. From expert guidance to tailored projects, Turing helps top companies realize AI that's more capable, more adaptable, and more effective. With Turing, discover how AI can accelerate your business growth. To learn more, visit turing.com/sorcery, spelt SOURCERY. That's turing.com/sorcery.
You mentioned, now it's stuck in my head, all of the defense use cases, but on the commercial side, like more, I don't know, like day to day, I guess, recreational.
Yeah.
So what are people using Regents for that?
Yeah. So, my founding pain point. So, grew up in the Boston area. We're based in Rhode Island now. So it was like the East Coast, Boston to New York, or Rhode Island to New York, And so no matter which way you go today, it's 4+ hours. Like you can drive, you're stuck in traffic. You can take the train, it costs as much as a plane, same amount of time. You take the plane, you're in the air for maybe an hour, not even long enough to like pull out your computer and send an email before you're coming back down to altitude. And you're spending more time in the airport and sitting in line than you are in the airplane itself. So like none of these are optimized. And there's this hole in the market in regional transportation where it's too long to drive and too short to fly. And we don't have boats, and high-speed rail costs billions and billions of dollars. So like what we're doing is bringing that high-speed rail level of speed and cost and comfort without the billions of dollars of high-speed rail infrastructure. And we're doing it to obviously coastal transportation. And you could think like, oh, that's only the coast. How big is that? But like 40% of the world lives in coastal communities. Like we're in one now. Boston's one, New York and Miami and LA and San Francisco. And so like all of these are the big markets we're going to do.
There's a river here that borders Canada.
There's rivers. We can bring rivers back.
Bring the rivers back.
We can do the Mississippi. We're bringing back the Mississippi River.
Bring the rivers back. That'd be great. One of the questions that I was like really curious about are more on the regulatory side of this. Like, what are the regulatory constraints for creating new vessels or, I don't know, airplanes, seagliders, all of it?
Yeah, that was one of the big frustrations from working in our previous lives as aerospace engineers. It's like we'd do months and months of work, and we'd have all our paperwork ready, and we'd have the airplane on the tarmac ready to fly, and we'd just be waiting on a letter from the FAA or the radio, the FCC or whatever other 3-letter agency you had to satisfy with some paperwork. And so that's not how you constructively test. And so one of our sort of unique insights, and we're not making up new rules, these actually existed. It turns out like if you go into US law, there's a definition of a wing and ground effect craft as a vessel. We're like, that's pretty cool. So we can build this flying machine. So we have this high speed mobility. We can service this massive coastal market, and we can do so under maritime jurisdiction. So in the US, that means the US Coast Guard. So we're working through certification with the Coast Guard now. The details of the process actually sort of mirror an aviation certification process. It's similar safety analyses, similar documentation, et cetera. But the Coast Guard, and I would say maritime overall, is used to doing new builds because the same entity needs to certify a cruise ship and an oil tanker and all these different kinds of vehicles. And so they all look very different and have different systems. Whereas the FAA is like, I will certify an Airbus commercial airliner and a Boeing commercial airliner. And like they all look pretty much exactly the same and they have similar systems. And that's why certifying electric aviation has taken so long. It's like, well, I certify engines and I certify fuel systems. And what's a battery? It's sort of both. It's sort of neither. So we're going down the maritime certification pathway with the US Coast Guard here in the US. And then internationally, there's actually great alignment that these kind of vehicles, wing and ground craft, and seagliders are a kind of wing and ground craft, are boats and not planes.
Can we talk about waves?
Let's talk about waves.
Waves and weather.
I love waves.
You do?
Yeah.
Tell me about how waves come into picture. What if there's a rogue wave?
Yeah. So when we founded the company, we did a whole bunch of research on wing ground craft, but you don't need to do that much. If you go to Wikipedia and you're like, what happened to wing and ground craft? And they're like, they don't take waves well.
Okay.
Or like seaplanes don't take waves well. Like that's why they only do rivers and lakes. We're like, okay, if we're going to make this vehicle, it has to do winds and waves. Requirement is seagliders are going to be as reliable as or more so than commercial aviation, right? Admittedly, a lot of the commercial aviation problems right now are related to the crew, and we don't have pilots, we have mariners. So actually we'll solve that problem too. But from a weather perspective, if aircraft are flying, seagliders are operating. So that meant we needed to take high seas and be able to take off and land. So that's where a hydrofoil comes in. Seagliders were literally meant for this open water, high sea state mission. So typically a seaplane or a flying boat or even a past wing and ground craft, like the Russians built the Akronoplans back in the 60s, floated, and then you have to come up to speed on the water, which means you basically need to clear a runway, which is not always viable in a busy harbor, but clear runway, come up to speed, 100+ mile an hour. If you've been on like a speedboat or something, you're going to like start skipping off the surface of the water as you come up to speed, and then you take off into the air. So you go from float to fly. So with seagliders, we float, foil, and fly. So we have that intermediate hydrofoiling mode. We're taking technology from the America's Cup or Sail GP, these racing yachts, or e-foil surfboards, if you've seen or been on one of those.
Those are really hard.
Have you been on one?
Yeah, I always wipe out.
Yeah, so you know how difficult it is to control them.
So hard.
That like gives me a lot of respect for our controls team when it's like, oh, this is like pretty difficult.
Well, it's hard because it's electric, so it just jolts.
Yeah. Oh, there's a ton of torque in those motors, and then you have to control. So our system's doing that 50 times a second, and we're going 50+ miles an hour on the foil to give you a sense of how hard that system is working and how hard the problem is. But the whole point is it had to work in this high sea state. So we have this hydrofoiling mode that lets us take up to 5 feet waves, and we've pulled, buoy data from all around the world, and we're like 90+% utilization in every harbor in the world. And so we can take off in 5 feet, and then we retract those foils. Now we have this really deep V hull that we can land and shed the wave energy, so we can land in 5 feet too.
Interesting. I was going to ask about the landing process.
Yeah, it's an important process to consider.
Yeah, especially with the foil, because that's, a pointy thing.
Yeah, so that was the other sort of key design change is the foils are great for takeoff, but once we take off, we retract them. So they're sort of like takeoff gear instead of landing gear. And then what it allows us to do is we have this really deep V hull. It almost looks like a canoe hull. So you'd never be able to get up on a plane or up on a step, they call it, to be able to get enough speed to take off if we just had the hull, but we don't need to because we have the hydrofoil. So we can land on this hull and it pierces the water almost like an icebreaker, and we can shed all that wave energy.
Since we're at Reindustrialize, let's talk about manufacturing.
Yes.
Let's talk about American manufacturing. Where exactly are you manufacturing right now, and how do you kind of like source the whole supply chain?
Yeah, so Regent's based in Rhode Island. We just broke ground on our manufacturing facility. So it's 250,000 square feet there. It's a massive building. It's pretty awesome. I like drive by every day. I'm like, this is cool. Like,
Congrats.
thank you. Super excited. We currently have about 30,000 square feet of engineering and build space. Then we have some test facilities there as well in the Quonset Business Park in Rhode Island, which is a pretty cool spot right now to be, because we're sort of seeing this resurgence of defense and ocean technology. So our factory is right across the street from Anduril's new factory that they're building with their dive robotics division. Ours is a little bigger, but building right across the street. We have a few other autonomous drone and subsea and surface vessels in town, and Saab's brought a factory in, and Raytheon has a factory. So like, it's actually a really cool spot to build right now. But so we've done all of the integration work in-house. We built all of our carbon composites using resources in the state. And that's one of the reasons why we're there, because Newport, Rhode Island, it's like the center of the sailing world. So we have these incredible craftsmen and carbon fiber engineers that are actually like way more advanced than what you'd find in aerospace today. And then as we get into manufacturing, we'll start sourcing. We already source from a global supply chain of some of the components, but we're solidifying that as we're about a year from opening that facility.
That's really exciting. I love Rhode Island. It's
really, you go a lot?
Yeah. I grew up in Connecticut, so we would go to Watch Hill. We'd go to Newport.
Nice.
It's great.
All right. Well, you got to come by and get on the water with us.
I would love to.
Yes.
You always pass by the big like submarine hub and all of that stuff.
Yeah. So Quonset is the same spot where that's electric boat, but now we're electric flying boat. So
Good.
Up leveling. Yeah.
Next level.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to talk like more future scope. Okay. So like in the next 5 to 10 years, what does the future of maritime look like, and aviation?
Yeah. Like generally, holistically, beyond Regent even. Like
with Regent.
We're
talking about Regent today.
Yeah, I know. But like how
Tell
high
me
do we
about
go
the future
here?
with Regent's view.
I love it. Okay. So 10 years from now, you send your kid to kindergarten and they learn about all the modes of transportation, and they learn about cars and trains and boats and planes and sea gliders, because it's just that integrated into society. Like you take the sea glider to go to Watch Hill instead of driving there. You sea glide to go to work. People change how they live and work because sea glider opens up their commutes. You don't need to live in downtown Manhattan anymore. You can live throughout Connecticut because your sea glider puts you on a 20-minute affordable commute. It is high-speed rail on every coastline on the planet. And then in defense, in 10 years, we will not have had a World War III because of Regent's efforts and many other efforts in deterring that conflict. Because we put 1,000 sea gliders in the Taiwan Strait and we said, try it. So that's the future.
Can we crank out 1,000 a year? What's kind
We'll get there. Yeah, we're working through exactly how many we can build now.
Do 1,000 a day? What are we looking at?
Yeah, I mean, certainly in the plan. Like that's the goal. Hell yeah.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about AI and how this like is implemented in the manufacturing process, the design process, even if it is, I don't know. So are you thinking about AGI within your processes? Like, has there been any pressure in the boardroom?
We're definitely thinking about it. I mean, I'm putting pressure on the team. Like we are in the wave of this this was like the development of the computer, the development of internet, the development of AGI. So like for sure, we're trying to figure out how to get it into our systems. I think to some extent, one of the impressive things about like all of the stuff going on in mobility right now is the lack of AI in some cases. Like SpaceX brings the rocket home and lands them. Like that's a deterministic algorithm. Like someone did the math on that and wrote those controllers and it landed itself. So there's a lot of that too, especially when we have human levels of safety on board, as this needs to be reliable, traceable. We need to understand the math and the physics. It needs to do the exact same thing every single time to a very, very high level of precision and reliability. But as it pertains into manufacturing, so sort of like as we build the manufacturing pipeline, we can sort of have these AI capabilities or systems or tools sort of following us. So I don't know actually right now how heavy we're going to lean in on AI in the initial factory build. Because again, to some extent, it's like we have these incredible boat builders and aerospace engineers that have built systems before, that have manufactured systems before. And so we need to get this product into market. But as it pertains to optimization, increasing the scale, introducing robotics, that's where I think we're going to see these AI systems playing a massive role. How can I go from 12 seagliders a year to 120 seagliders a year to 1,200 seagliders a year? Like that's where I think we're going to see the scale. I think too, and obviously like Tesla has shown this in the self-driving cars, like, and we talked about it with the announcement of Regent Defense today, is we're also going from our human captain systems to fully autonomous systems. Right now on the Sea Glider, we have a fully automated flight control system. So if you take your hands off, it flies itself. And we have this really robust sensor system that's looking ahead and down and underwater and controlling your altitude. So the autonomy part of that just needs to connect those two and say, do I go left or right or fast or slow? So I think we can use AI, and I think we will use AI as we introduce that full autonomy capability. But it's going to be growth. And always there's going to be a coupling of these sort of, call it old-fashioned, but still critically important deterministic math and physics-based algorithms, which is sort of the underpin and backbone of like every aerospace technology, plus these new technologies of AI. But it'll be a balance.
Intense.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's a fun place to be.
That's super fun.
Yeah.
Go on autopilot mode for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that's sort of the coolest part, honestly, is like you, and you got to come fly our sim too. We have our sim here too.
I'm coming. Yeah, that'd be great.
No, it's downstairs. But you get in, you're like, and those are using actually the same flight physics, like when you move those, when you go left and right and fast and slow, like it's using the same flight physics that are on the vehicle right now. So it's like this thing literally will fly itself and just hold you at 30 feet on that cushion of air over the water. And that's why, and we have a DC office as well. And so that's why when we bring down the Coast Guard and when we bring down the admirals and generals, it's like a boat driver really can drive this thing. And this is really operating in the maritime domain. Like it flies, but this is not an aircraft because of that control system and because we're flying so low.
So fun. Do you just play around in the sim sometimes?
All the time.
I would imagine.
All the time. Yeah.
You should sell those.
I think we will. Video game.
As we wrap up, I'm really curious for performance on your side. How is Regent helping the U.S. with defense? Like, how are you increasing performance for U.S. defense with your new Sea Glider?
Yeah, I mean, we're bringing speed to maritime mobility, right? Right now, we have aircraft that are taking off and landing from land bases, and we have boats that can go 20 knots. And so we're bringing this capability to have aircraft speed and go well over 100 miles an hour, we're going 180 miles an hour on the wing with the ability to be deployed like a boat. So it's actually like a game-changing capability. That's why they're so excited, why we've been working with them. And every time we meet, it's like, when can we get these? Can we go faster? We're like, guys, this is safety critical. There's a lot of building here. There's a lot of complexity. But the Marine Corps needs this technology, and we're moving as fast as we safely can. Fantastic.
Well, Billy, it was a pleasure to have you on. I'm so excited to test out via the sim, maybe come out to the facility in Rhode Island. I don't know. This is very exciting. So thank
Molly,
you.
thanks for having me.
Of course. Mitch Lee, welcome to Sorcery.
Thanks for having me.
So you're the founder and CEO of Arc Boats.
Yep.
What is Arc Boats?
We build fully electric boats and hybrid electric boats. We're really thinking about how do we rebuild the maritime industry around a more modern powertrain. And on the consumer side, what that means is we started with some power sport boats. The first one we brought to market was the Arc One. It's kind of like our version of the Tesla Roadster. And then we followed that up with the Arc Sport, which is a fully electric wake sport boat. We're ramping production of that right now. We just announced a fully electric fishing boat called the Arc Coast, and have also started some work on the commercial side, or at least announced our intentions to go after some projects on the commercial side. Again, all rebuilding this industry around more modern powertrains.
Love it. And I love boats. I grew up on boats, so I'm a big fan, and they're beautiful. Arc's boats are beautiful. Yeah,
we're leaning into the opportunity to kind of rethink the design of these boats when you have a more simple powertrain. In the same way that Tesla came along and said, hey, we're going to build this vehicle around the battery pack that gives you a frunk and that gives you a more modern software system powering everything. and you could celebrate that. We're trying to do the same thing in boating. Boating's lagged the automotive industry by decades at most points in time, and so we're excited to modernize it.
And we're at Reindustrialize. So I have to ask you, what is ARC's role in reindustrialization?
Going electric makes a ton of sense. There are all these sayings in the boating industry, like the best days of a boat owner's life are the day they buy it and the day they sell it, because they're maintenance headaches, they're unreliable, they're super expensive to operate, you have to winterize them, they've got fumes coming off of them. The analogy I give is like today's boats look a lot like the old lawnmowers or leaf blowers that are loud and noxious and run out of gas on you. Going electric solves all those problems. The challenge is that boats consume a lot of power moving through water. And so you need to solve that power challenge by putting a lot of energy on board. We do that by building our own battery packs in-house. They're giant battery packs, 226 kilowatt hours. So, the size of multiple electric sedans put together. When you build your own battery pack like that, you have to build the vessel around it, or you're going to end up with a very compromised product. So our version of reindustrialization is a pretty vertically integrated product here. We build our own battery packs. We build the primary structures around those battery packs. We design both of those together in unison, all under one roof. We've got a 150,000 square foot facility in Torrance, California, in Los Angeles, California, and are manufacturing boats out of it.
It's exciting. Someone in my building in LA works for ARC.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. His fiance or wife was wearing an ARC hat. And so I was like, oh my God, ARC.
We have what I view as an unfair advantage when it comes to the team that we're able to attract, because it's a compelling mission. And it's not just about emissions into the air. It's also about cleaning up our water and not exhausting down into the water. And when you look at the commercial sector, it's about black carbon and all of that. So it's a compelling mission. It's also a really fun product. Like
really fun.
One of our company perks is that you get to take the ARC Sport out on the weekend or after work, and that's really compelling. And it's a fun product that gets developed on a very fast timeline. We went 0 to first boat on the water in about 3 months at ARC. We went 0 to first customer delivery in about 24 months. And our next products are on an even faster timeline. So if you're an engineer or you're somebody working on, at ARC, you're seeing your work ship at a very fast pace, and then you get to enjoy it yourself on the weekend. And that's really fun. We've got a lot of aerospace engineers that will never be able to ride those rockets, or at least not in the near future, whereas they could sit on our boats and show their family their boats.
Yeah, you have employees from Rivian, Tesla, SpaceX. So how do you, those are really fast timelines. So how do you guys all come together? You use principles from where they worked? Like, how does this work?
Yeah, there's a balancing act here. We do try to reason a lot from first principles. The founding team was pretty heavy at SpaceX. And so that first principles mentality is definitely something we're bringing as well. But building is also a craft industry. It's got a long history of these really talented boat builders and naval architecture firms designing the vessels themselves. And so we tried to take from both of those. We don't want to ignore that storied history of boat building and think that we know better, because often we don't. But we are also trying to rethink a lot of the problems that we're solving in the context of an electric powertrain or hybrid electric powertrain.
There's a big opportunity here. So what is your long-term vision?
We want every vessel on the water to be powered by ARC. We're big believers in this. You could kind of take the environmental aspect out of this. Electric powertrains are better suited to a water environment than these pure diesel or pure gas powertrains are. So we want to modernize, this entire industry around those powertrains, layer software in at every level, and create this platform that on the consumer side makes for just better boats. They're more performant, they're quieter, they have software features that aren't anywhere in the industry today. But on the commercial side, there are also these platforms that you can start layering in autonomy or start layering in added safety features. So every vessel on the water.
What is the experience like? So you mentioned some software features. That's like boats. Boats are not. They're not that crazy impressive. I mean, some of the newer models are great, but it's not like you're getting like a Tesla screen in there or like a whole dashboard that's a screen.
Right.
So like
the industry looks very different than automotive. Today, like the way it evolves is boats have a pretty low barrier to entry. Almost anyone, somebody in a garage can kind of build their own boat, strap an outboard to the back of it, and it's a boat. What that naturally means is that the industry has evolved in a way where most people are buying most components off the shelf. And that means none of them are integrated. You have your Garmin display, you have JL speakers, you have like all of these things are kind of separate systems. And the biggest downside of that is that you don't have software tying it all together, because boat builders don't have software engineers. They don't have, electrical engineers. In building ARC, we do have those engineers, and we are integrating all these different components. And that allows us to do everything from very basic features like steering in reverse, which does not exist on most boats because you back up and they don't have the software that says, hey, we know the position of this boat, and we know that the prop walk moves it in a certain direction, and we have the thruster on board that we can activate to compensate for that. Like, it's actually a pretty simple engineering problem, but it takes the foundation of all these components talking to each other and having the sensors, and then just having the software engineers on staff to do it. So at a basic level, it's features like steering in reverse, but you could get more advanced and you could get into station keeping, just keep my boat here without me thinking about it. You could get into assisted turning, where you're starting to use different propulsion mechanisms on the boat to get you better handling. Waypoint navigation, like there's skier down detection, where somebody falls and we have a camera on board and it will alert you and it will automatically retract the surf system. And there's just so much that we can do with software given the platform that we've built on the hardware side.
one thing that I was impressed with in a model that my dad got was Skyhook. And I just thought, like, being on boats for so long, like there's no new innovations, and it's like you have Skyhook, you just like get to stay in one place for a while, and it was like amazing.
And that's like that I don't want to be too reductive here, but like that's not a lot of work for us to do. That was a week or two of somebody's time to just say, okay, hit a button, keep the boat here. The hard part is actually getting the hardware on there and getting all the systems talking together, and then the software component of this, that's just scratching the surface. And all the features that we have planned from here on out take the industry from where it is today and leapfrog it by decades.
You've raised around $100 million from some big Silicon Valley names. Investors like Eclipse, Andreessen Horowitz, Lower Carbon Capital, Abstract Ventures, and a newer investor, Menlo Ventures. The last round was a Series B. It was like a $70 million Series B in 2023. Why did you go after venture capital?
This is such an obvious idea. There are probably 1 million people in the US that have thought somebody should make Tesla for boats or somebody should make electric boats. Again, in going from gas to electric, it's not a gas car to electric car. Like, it's a gas leaf blower to an electric leaf blower. The percent improvement in the experience is dramatically better. So it's this obvious idea. We're not trying to invent a new category. We're not really taking demand risk. We're just delivering better boats. There's also not a lot of technology risk in what we're doing, because the automotive industry has existed for the past 10 years and has been plowing money into electrification and high voltage power electronics and battery supply chains for 10 plus years now. It's all driven by execution risk. And so when you have a business that is driven by execution risk, that is a great fit for venture capital, because you already have all the conviction you need and you just need to hit go and actually go attract the team and do that hard work. And it comes with an upfront investment. Like, it's hard to actually go do that. It's hard to go build the battery packs and get them working reliably and safely and fully tested and qualified and ready to go out into the field for many years to come. It's hard to go attract that team. It's hard to go spin up a production system. risk capital is a great fit for that. And the upside here is every boat on the water can benefit from this. And that's a big opportunity.
When you're testing and building the boat, there's a lot of data involved. There's AI involved. We're in like this transformative time where it's proliferating across the board. I'm curious from your perspective, like how are you thinking about AI integration and potentially AGI within the boat itself?
One of our biggest bottlenecks today is actually just manufacturing boats. We have a ton of demand and we need to increase the supply that we have. Manufacturing is hard for any number of reasons. It's this complex orchestration problem. Like you could have 99.9% of things go well, but if one screw is missing at some critical step of the process, everything slows down. I think a lot about how do we use tools to make that process go better, faster, be more efficient. And so for us, it's almost less about what goes on the boat today and a lot more about what goes into building the boat today. How do we take the team that we have today, make them a lot more efficient? Obviously, our software engineers are all using these new tools to basically be more efficient, more effective software engineers. But electrical engineers are starting to get a bunch of new tools for how you do circuit design and how you validate some of the designs, and manufacturing like work instructions and the generation of those work instructions, which are kind of like, for the uninitiated, it's kind of like imagine IKEA furniture where you have some set of instructions that tell you how to assemble something. That happens at a more extreme degree in a manufacturing environment. And so like, how do you actually go write those and generate them when a design changes or something like that? You could kind of look at every step of this and people can get a lot more efficient. We also pull thousands of data points a second off of our boats. And so you could deploy what you might call AI or machine learning to go do anomaly detection on those boats. Say like, hey, this boat, something seems off about it. And you can have engineers go check that out proactively so you catch issues before a customer ever notices.
Can you also put it on autopilot? I mean,
yeah,
all these routes have been tracked for a while on satellite systems.
Yeah, we definitely have aspirations for these boats to like navigate themselves. It's a steer-by-wire system and throttle-by-wire system, meaning you can electrically control the entire boat. We have a little bit of a hackathon project that over the course of a weekend and about 15 minutes and a screwdriver, one of our engineers turned it into a remote control boat.
Wow.
Which really just proves how technologically advanced the boats are, that these are platforms that software sits on top of. We have not yet gone full into autonomy because a lot of the times, especially on the consumer side of this business, people like driving. You're not stuck in traffic. You're not dealing with like that sort of thing. Like you're out on the water with a wake surfer or wakeboarder behind the boat. So you like to drive. But especially as we look at, hey, how do you get this boat back onto a trailer? How do you get it docked? There's a lot of opportunity to use software to make that a lot easier for people.
At the end of most days when we're on the water, my dad's just like, isn't this fun? It's very wholesome.
It is so fun being out on the water. Mm-hmm. And then owning the boat is not fun. And that's the part that like we want to make the owning the boat part way more fun, or at least way less bad. And then the being out on the water all that much more fun. Because I think about my own time out on the water. Like I grew up water skiing, wakeboarding, all of that. And being able to talk to people while the boat's in motion, while you're pulling a wake surfer or wakeboarder is really nice. It's like most people just get accustomed to when the boat's in motion, you stop all conversation and you don't have to do that with an ARC. Or recording somebody automatically and say, wow, they just landed a cool trick or they just wiped out, and you have that recording, you send it to your phone, and now you get to joke about that for the rest of the day. There's just so many different ways to make that experience both on and off the water better when you modernize these vehicles.
So it is so fun.
This is one of those cases where seeing is believing. Like I could talk about the benefits here. The reality is there's no replacing just experiencing it. When you actually punch the throttle and get thrown back, and you don't have that roaring engine noise. It is a wild.
So what is the ride difference on an electric boat versus gas? Because I mean, there's the same for cars. You get jolt, it's much faster, but does that transfer in the water?
It's more noticeable in different ways. So when you first pull away from the dock and you don't hear anything except water, it is a wild experience because you're so used to that like roar of an engine. Then you punch it and it's, I mean, we've got over twice the torque of even the most premium boats out there. And we size up our propeller, which is, you kind of think of it like the tire for boats. It's what allows you to transfer power into the water. We have a bigger propeller so that we can transfer more power before it starts to cavitate. That translates into just a really snappy experience when you punch the throttle. If you've been on a newer boat, you punch a throttle and there's multiple seconds of lag before the boat's like, okay, I'm going to start moving forward now. Very different experience. When you corner, like when you turn this wheel really hard, it handles like a jet boat. And you'll hear people say this, like this feels like a jet boat, except it's a 24 foot or like, 23 foot, 7,000 pound wake sport boat. And then again, the like software experience of it and not inhaling fumes and being able to hold that conversation, like it's a great experience for many different reasons than you'd find in automotive.
Well, I'm convinced. Hopefully my dad's convinced.
Yeah. This seemed like a little bit of a pitch for your
Look,
parents.
they're in the market for a boat right now. So, Steven, if you're listening, I know a guy.
Yeah. We do have quite the backlog right now. And so we're selling our boats now for next summer season.
Perfect timing. We'll be there.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
As we wrap up, I do want to ask you a question. As CEO of a capitally intensive business, how do you think about performance and spending smarter to move faster in an ARC boat?
Yeah. Boating, like this whole business is predicated on how do you make a lot of progress without spending a lot of money? Because it's not the same size, at least none of these pockets of like wake sport boats and center console boats. They're smaller markets than your sedan market. So you need to normalize the amount that you're spending to the opportunity in those industries. We pride ourselves on being capital efficient. We brought our first product to market with less than $20 million deployed, like delivered it to a customer. If you compare that to like automotive companies, they will spend billions of dollars getting to first delivery, first revenue. We pride ourselves on that because you need to stay lean and scrappy for that return on invested capital to be lucrative in the marine space. And, continue to expand the addressable market as you build up into bigger and bigger vessels.
Great. Well, all I'm thinking about is getting an ARC boat. So
come out on a demo. It's a lot of fun.
I definitely
we could do the next conversation out there, and
let's do it live in action.
We could do it.
Great.
Make it happen.
We'll bring Brett. Brett's in LA. Grab him on. Perfect.
Sounds great.
All right. Well, Mitch, this was so much fun. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's Molly. If you enjoy our interviews, check out our newsletter, sorcery.vc, where we deliver a once-a-week top deals and tech headlines email, and also go deeper on our podcast interviews. Subscribe to Sorcery today. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen. Link in description to sign up.